Hey there, fellow horse lovers. Welcome back to the Daily Ride podcast. I am Morgan, your host, and today I'm diving into a fascinating and currently pretty personal topic for me in my life: horse herd dynamics. How horses organize their social structures, how they communicate with each other, how they navigate close relationships and relationships with their larger community of horses. And this is personal to me because it's taught me a lot about what we as humans can learn from them and how they handle their relationships, how they view and respond and develop leadership skills and respond to each other, how horses approach and handle big emotions and unsafe situations as a group, and how they co-regulate with each other. Co-regulation is a skill that we can learn and study from observing horse herds, and this is really important in the realm of trauma healing and mental health and wellness. As always, the Daily Ride podcast supports True Heart Healing. True Heart Healing is my nonprofit organization aimed to leverage the healing power of equine partnership and the joy of equine companionship to support and empower children with disabilities and/or life-altering illnesses, service members, veterans, and their families to build stabilizing relationships, facilitate learning and personal growth, find hope, find their herds, and discover their purpose. If this sounds like something you would like to support, head on over to www.the-daily-ride.com to make a donation. True Heart and I greatly appreciate your support. Horses are prey animals and they are social animals. So, like humans, they thrive having relationships and community, but as prey animals, they also depend on their communities for their survival. In the wild, they live in herds with really complex social structures that enable them to roam free on wilderness lands, to find food, to find water, to find safety, to provide each other with safety, to find shelter. And all of this is done because they're able to communicate to each other. They have a very well organized and understood hierarchy within their herds, and they provide care for each other, both in a physical and emotional way. There's a really popular misconception that horse herds operate under what we as predators understand as more of a dominance or authoritarian model, like, for example, a wolf pack, an alpha wolf, or a leader in a group of people. But research and observation can tell us that the reality of horse herds is actually a lot more nuanced and complex. In fact, there's not an alpha horse. There might be a lead horse, but the way that that horse is chosen to be the leader is very different than the way a dog would be chosen to be the alpha in a pack of dogs. So here in the American West, there are herds of wild Mustang horses that still roam free. And we see herd structures that are similar in Mustangs to the herd structures we see in domestic settings. And their behaviors among herd members are remarkably similar despite different breeds of horses and different wild versus domestic settings. The herds are typically led by a lead mare, not a stallion, so a lead female horse. So they tend to be a little bit more matriarchal in structure. And this lead mare is not necessarily the most aggressive or strongest or most brave, but this lead mare is usually the most experienced. So tends to be a little bit older in the herd. And she is really good at knowing where to find food, where to bring the herd for water, and where safe places for the herd are going to be. So for a horse, a good leader is not someone who is strong or who exemplifies what the ideal horse might be. To a horse, a good leader is a horse that they can trust to take care of other horses, not just themselves. Of course, there are stallions in wild horse herds, the boys, and they play a role in protection and reproduction, but typically in wild horse herds, stallions don't have the same kind of responsibility of managing the herd's daily operations. That almost always falls to the mares. Another really interesting thing is that offspring in wild horse herds tend to stay close to their biological families, especially the girls. Fillies will almost always stay with their mothers for their entire lives unless they have been separated or the herd has split for some reason, usually another stallion comes in, or they are separated for external circumstances. Fillies tend to stay with their moms their whole life. Horses also have an understanding of other relatives and extended family and will often take turns babysitting the youngsters in the group. They will take turns grooming each other. They will take turns sleeping, and another horse will stand next to them and watch over them to make sure that they're safe. So you can see from just observing a group of horses interacting together that they are able to provide physical and emotional care for each other within this herd or community structure. And they do this, obviously, by communicating very well. So how are horses in a large group able to communicate so well that they can maintain such an organized structure within their community? One of the key features of horse communication, and honestly human communication, although we are not masters of it, horses definitely are, is that they are very good at controlling their own and sensing others' energy and intention. So this means they are very aware of their own body language, their shifts in movement, the space they're physically taking up, and the energy that they are showing up with within themselves, as well as with other horses around them in the group and people. Horses can hear your heartbeat from outside your body 5-10 feet away from you. They hear what your pulse is doing, meaning if you are scared of them and your heart is racing, they know. They also have really strong visual and auditory acuity. And so any change in your breathing patterns, if you tilt your head one way or the other, if your jaw is clenched tight, they notice. They can see this, they can hear this, and they are masterful at understanding what those mean in terms of your energy and your intention. And it is exactly how they communicate with each other within a herd. Not only that, horses will use their herd and their herd mates' energies and intentions to regulate their own emotions, to help calm themselves down, to help reason through complex problems, not through forcing one another to deal with something, but through attuning to the group's overall emotional state. Say you're a young horse and you pick your head up from grazing and you notice there's a coyote out in the field. As a young horse, you might not know to recognize if that coyote is a life-threatening problem for you or not. So you look to the horses grazing around you in your herd. They might notice the coyote because they sense that you picked your head up. They can sense your energy and intention. And those horses, if they decide that this coyote is no big deal, will put their heads back down and continue to graze, and their heart rates will remain the same. And you, as that young, unexperienced horse, can take that as a signal of, this is not a life-threatening problem. I can continue eating too. This is how they learn to regulate their own emotions and their own internal alarms, their own concerns, and they are always practicing attunement to the larger group around them. Now, what does attunement mean? I keep using this word. Attunement is different than sympathy or empathy. Attunement is probably even a better word to use from adjustment. They're not adjusting their emotions. Attunement is defined as the act of being in harmony with or being aware of and responsive to another being. I love that word, harmony. They're attuning to each other. They are living in harmonious action to each other. And I love harmony, not synchronicity, because harmony, when you are playing in harmony with someone, you are not playing the exact same note. You are not copying. You are not exactly the same. However, you are playing your own different note that sounds good with the other one. You fit together even though you are playing your own unique notes together. You are in harmony. So when I think about this idea of herds and communication and attunement, I start thinking about my human relationships and my social groups and family dynamics. Horse herds offer us a model to study of cooperative leadership, emotional regulation, and how attunement can be deeply healing for people, especially people who have experienced trauma and where emotional regulation might be difficult. By demonstrating this art of attunement to each other in the herd, this skill, especially in the technologic post-COVID era that we find ourselves in modern times, is a skill that's often not learned or mastered by a lot of us because we're separated by screens. So thankfully, like most everything else we talk about on the Daily Ride podcast, this is a skill that can be learned and developed through practice and through study of our favorite animals, horses. So trauma, anxiety, and other mental health challenges often stem from some form of a disruptive relationship, a loss of safety, and or difficulty regulating big emotions that we might have. The experience of trauma or the existence of a neurological difference can cause a disconnection from your community or your herd and only make these symptoms feel worse. The more you pull away from your community, the harder it is to attune to people because you are farther away from them and it's harder to regulate your emotions. And so you feel less and less safe and things kind of snowball. What's extra fascinating to me, though, is being with a horse herd as a human can offer a model for healing those things and help us as humans build and connect with our own herd of humans and form our own personal herd or community. A sense of community and our belonging in it, even though we're not prey animals like horses and it's not essential for us to live in a group for our survival, it is essential for our holistic well-being and is pretty crucial for us to heal from trauma. In fact, developing genuine relationships, whether it be with another human or a horse, is one of the tenets of True Heart Healing's mission because genuine, deep relationships can be really stabilizing to people who are engaging in the healing process, which in and of itself can be destabilizing, can be difficult, can be painful. And heck, even after healing has occurred, and you are on the other side of this really important work, it's important to maintain your health and well-being by being in community, to having important, deep, genuine relationships, both for your physical and your mental health. So let's dive into how we can practice this with horse herds. First, let's talk about connection and trust. Horses rely on a really profound level of trust to function as a herd. Remember, they don't define leadership as the prime example of a horse. They define leadership as a horse that they trust. A horse who's been isolated or traumatized takes a lot of time to reintegrate to a herd, much like a person recovering from trauma. We especially see this in service members returning from deployments. Equine-assisted therapy utilizes this natural dynamic by allowing people to build trust with horses in a safe, nonverbal way. And oftentimes, this is just the practice of being together out in a field and not even necessarily interacting human to horse. In fact, there are studies that show that simply being around a horse can lower cortisol levels, which is our stress hormone, and increase oxytocin levels, which is our bonding hormone. And this is why equine therapy can be so effective for individuals with PTSD, anxiety, and depression, because those symptoms usually are accompanied by high levels of cortisol, and it facilitates a reconnection to yourself as well as others in a way that feels safe and a little bit more natural than sometimes it does talking to another human being as a therapist. And in fact, HeartMath has studied this phenomenon of why it feels good to just be around horses, even if you're not necessarily interacting with them. And this has to do with our magnetic fields and our hearts. Horses can hear our hearts, but not only that, horses are sensitive to the electromagnetic field that is emitted by our hearts. In fact, our heart is controlled by our vagus nerve, and that nerve emits stronger electromagnetic impulses than our brain does. And that nerve often can cause our bodies to enter or exit fight or flight mode. It has everything to do with flipping on and off our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. So horses can sense that electromagnetic field that, whether it's regulated or dysregulated, we're emitting from our heartbeats up to 5, 10, 15 feet away from us. And they react to this, sometimes much farther away from 15 feet, because horses also have an electromagnetic field emitted from their vagus nerve and their hearts, but their hearts are significantly bigger than ours. And so their electromagnetic fields are significantly stronger. And studies have shown that a horse's electromagnetic field has the ability to influence our human ones, especially when they're dysregulated, and bring them back into regulation. Again, they are not forcing our hearts. Their hearts are not syncing up with ours. They are helping bring our hearts into harmony with theirs. They are attuning to us, and they're helping our bodies switch out of our fight or flight mode and into our rest and digest mode. They're helping us regulate our nervous system by helping attune to our electromagnetic field. And so being around them really does help stabilize us. It is not just in your head. When you go hang out with your horse and it feels good, there's a scientific reason for that. There's even more science behind this. Herd behavior also helps with trauma healing. And the key concept here is co-regulation. So not just attunement, but co-regulating with a horse. When a calm and balanced horse helps regulate a human being's nervous system, trauma can really throw off our nervous systems. It can leave you in a state of hypervigilance or in a state of complete dissociation or shutdown. So either you are hyper aware of your surroundings and overreacting to everything that you see and hear, or you're completely shut down and you are in your head, away from your body, lost in your thoughts. You don't react to anything. Horses, if they are well regulated, can use their ability to read and respond to our energy to help gently bring our nervous system back to a state of balance. Have you ever walked out into a field with your horse after a really stressful day at work, and your horse has walked up to you and rested their head on your shoulder or on your hand and taken a deep breath, and suddenly you just feel better? Your horse is taking a deep breath to use their energy and their intention towards you to help you calm down the way that they are calm. So this is a little different than just attuning their heartbeats with ours, attuning our nervous system. They're helping co-regulate our emotions by using their energy and intention. Your horse has to choose to do this. And oftentimes, horses, because they are altruistic, loving animals, will choose to do this for us, especially if they have a bond with us. And you can test this. Step into a round pen with your horse and intentionally try and make your energy erratic and scattered. Your horse is going to react, maybe initially with a little concern, maybe some distance, alertness, what is going on with her. But as you might slow your breathing and soften your posture, your horse is going to start mirroring that change. Often they might walk towards you. They might make a deep sigh. They might drop their head a bit. This immediate biofeedback from your horse, where you're seeing your horse physically display the energy that you're holding, can help us practice being aware of our own internal states and help us learn how to self-regulate our big emotions in a healthy way. Sometimes, I know myself, I have a hard time recognizing what emotion I'm feeling. I know that something doesn't feel good, but beyond that, I'm not always good at recognizing exactly what or why that is. And so seeing my horse True physically show me what that feels like, and she's over 1,000 pounds now, helps me understand, oh, this is the energy that I'm showing up with. Do I want to make any changes? And so sometimes simply just taking a second to center myself and calm myself and mentally put that stressor away for the 30 minutes to an hour that I get to be out there with my horse can help tremendously. And I can see True's head start to drop and her breathing slow and her eye to start to close and overall her body to soften and relax when I soften and relax. And so this is a great way that horses physically mirror our internal emotions in a way to help teach us to self-regulate and to help us co-regulate with them. Another critical lesson we can learn from horse herds is boundary setting and respect. Horses are really clear in their communication with each other. And you can see this if you have your horse out in a pasture where they are fed out of a larger bale with other horses. If another horse gets too close to them while they're eating, they'll signal it. Usually it will start small. They'll pin their ears. They'll adjust their shoulder. Maybe they'll start pointing their hip towards them, telling them, hey, get out of my space. If that horse doesn't respond, the horse communicates a little bit more strongly. Maybe they'll pick up that back leg. Maybe they actually will kick. Maybe they'll give a little squeal. Horses are very good about communicating their boundaries and gently escalating as is needed. This is another skill that a lot of us haven't had a lot of practice learning and developing, especially in modern times. And so watching horses communicate their boundaries and enforce them can be really healing. A lot of trauma survivors especially can struggle with boundary setting due to past experiences where those boundaries of theirs were violated or neglected, or because they carry shame from their trauma and don't feel like they deserve to have boundaries. In this way, horses can help reteach us this skill by providing a clear, respectful example for us to learn from, where they honor each other's personal space without shame or over-aggression towards each other. Horses are also really good about not holding grudges towards each other. If another horse is too close while they're eating, Usually one will pin their ears, they'll scoot away a couple feet, and they'll go back to eating together. They will go back to being attuned to each other after having displayed and respected that personal space boundary. I've had the privilege of healing through equine therapy, and I think the herd that I have developed because of that has led to an incredible transformation in my own life. This topic has been on my heart to talk about on the podcast this week because I recently moved back to where I feel like my human herd around equine therapy and healing started and still is. I moved true back to the Air Force Academy, where Grace and I used to provide therapy as part of Remount Foundation and Horseboy. And in doing so, I found myself back with my own herd of people. I think there's a lot to be said about developing close personal friendships and relationships and developing and maintaining a strong relationship with my family. But horse herds are more than just immediate family and close friends. They are a community that they exist within. And I found myself returning to a community of people that I feel like I belong to, that I feel like I am appreciated in, that I feel like I'm valued in, and a community who I value greatly, who has transformed my life in so many ways. I have had mentorship, I have had friendship and just joy and such value. I went back last week to reconnect and participate in a refresher training for some of our play days for a service that the Remount Foundation provides to service members and their families. And as I walked through the door and I brought my now fiance and my mom and dad with me, I was greeted by friendly faces who I've known and missed for the last couple of years, and the biggest heart-to-heart hugs that I didn't realize I needed, but I really did. And I found joy and love and this sense of belonging where these people know my heart and I know theirs. And even though we aren't necessarily close, there is a community there. I know that when I'm planning on going out of town or something were to happen to me or true, they would be there, no questions asked. I know that if I ever have any questions or I'm curious to learn something, I have so many people there that I could ask and they would be thrilled to explain and teach and mentor me. I have people who want to see me succeed. I have people who are invested in my success and I'm invested in theirs. And that sense of belonging and that sense of community and that sense of attunement to each other, again, not synchronizing, but harmonizing with each other, was so powerful to be back with this group of people. Because a lot of what we talk about in training for these services is we all bring our unique gifts to each therapeutic interaction, to each relationship with a horse. Our horses do too. Our horses are individuals. We are each uniquely gifted with things. How do we use those gifts to build each other up? How do we use those gifts to harmonize? How do we co-regulate each other? Sometimes the families that come in are carrying really heavy, really painful burdens. How do we co-regulate with them? How do we help their nervous system become balanced again and find regulation, find healing, find that stabilization? How do we help them connect to what they need with our horses and in our relationships with them? This is what herd is about. This is what attunement is about. This is what community is about. And for me, I didn't realize that I needed community. I didn't realize even until last weekend when I found myself back in my community how much I had missed it and how much I had deeply been longing for it. That sense of belonging, that sense of harmonizing with other people, people that you're not necessarily super close with, but people in your herd. That is truly healing because that environment is one that I feel free to explore in, that I feel free to share my gifts in, that I feel free to learn from others and build their gifts up and bring their gifts out of them. And I feel most powerful and safe when I'm in my herd, just like horses do. So before we wrap up, I want to leave you with some practical ways to incorporate this herd wisdom into your own life, even if you don't have direct access to horses, and how you too can find your own herd and community so you too can have that magic of attunement and sense of belonging in your own life because we all need it. First, make sure you practice awareness of your body language. So just like horses, even though we don't mean to, we communicate more through our nonverbal cues than our words. So make sure you're taking note of your posture, of your breathing, of your energy, of your intention when you're interacting with other people and yourself. I can't tell you how many times I've caught my internal monologue just being so mean to me. So pay attention to your energy and intention, even when you're directing it towards yourself. What are you communicating to your own body? What is your body communicating to everyone else? This is hard, but again, you can develop it with practice. 2, practice some healthy boundaries. If a horse can set a boundary with a simple shift in their weight to tell another horse to give them a little bit more space, so can you. Learn to express what you need calmly and clearly. It's okay to need things. In fact, boundaries help your relationships flourish more than they will ever harm them. Being able to show up in your herd and clearly and calmly express, this is what I need, this is what I don't need, can help find harmony in yourself and other people because it gives clear parameters of how people can best love and support you. 3, surround yourself with a supportive herd. Healing happens in the context of relationships. So find people who uplift you and create a sense of safety, just like a well-functioning herd. It's really tough to make friends as an adult. And I think the best strategy that myself, as a well-trained introvert, have found personally has been just show up and say the weird thing. Be authentically yourself. Own whatever's going on. Walking out of work the other day, I had a glass Tupperware that I accidentally banged against the metal door frame and my lunch exploded everywhere. And I was horrified. I could tell my face was just beet red because I could feel the blood rushing to my ears out of embarrassment. There was such a mess. There were garbanzo beans everywhere and kale and shards of glass. And everyone in the office had poked their head out their doors to see what this huge noise in the hallway was. And I remember thinking, okay, I don't know a lot of these people, but maybe if I show up and let myself be seen, like Brené Brown says, and say what I'm thinking, maybe one of them will meet me there in my vulnerability. And sure enough, when I said, this is really embarrassing, like, what a way to meet you for the first time. One of my coworkers said, that's nothing. I dropped my Tupperware right out of the microwave onto my shoes my first day. And we had this wonderful conversation after that. So find people who uplift you, who are rooting for you, who want to see you succeed and create a sense of safety for you, just like a well-functioning herd. Relationships can take time, and not all relationships are meant to be close ones, but they don't have to be close to be part of your herd. Try smiling at someone, sharing something sweet, a compliment. You might be surprised about how many people are actually in your herd, and you may not have even noticed it. 4, spend plenty of time in nature. Horses are deeply connected to the earth. So walking in nature, paying attention to the breeze, paying attention to the clouds in the sky and how the sun feels on your skin, slowing down and being present can be a really healing practice. And spending time outside is also a great way to meet people who enjoy doing similar things that you do outside. Who knows what outdoor community you might find yourself in when you go outside and spend time in nature and do something that makes you feel good. People who might belong in your herd are probably doing the same thing. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of The Daily Ride, all about herd dynamics and community. I hope you felt insight, inspiration, and harmony learning about horse herds and how it can relate to us healing from trauma and our mental well-being. If you're interested in learning more or experiencing equine therapy for yourself, please check out www.the-daily-ride.com to learn more about True Heart Healing or make a donation. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with someone who is in your herd or you'd like to be. Until next time, enjoy the ride.